I think probably the initial concern for brokers is like, oh, I don't want to have to talk about how much I'm getting paid or what I am providing back in return or the results we've had over the last 5 years, 10 years, because that's bad too, right? Like fundamentally, if you're scared of having that conversation, you don't believe you're bringing your clients enough value for the money you're making. And there is starting to be other good agencies like ours, and they'll take your clients in no time.
Welcome to Benefits Broker Boost, the show that gives employee benefits brokers practical strategies to grow, scale, and streamline their business. Presented by Plansight, where innovation meets efficiency in employee benefits. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. I'm your host, Adam Smith. I'm joined today by Donovan Ryckis. Donovan, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome back.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me, Adam.
Host Adam Smith. Donovan, you are the CEO and founder of Ethos Benefits. We're going to get into Ethos pretty significantly because it's a really unique benefits agency. But before we get into that, you didn't have the traditional path into benefits where you get an internship with a benefits agency, rise up through the ranks, and then kind of start your own thing. Branching off of that, you had a completely different path into benefits. So can you walk us through that? I think it kind of lends to the company culture that we're going to talk about when we get there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think everybody has kind of an odd intro to benefits just because it's not a super exciting or sexy career that anybody would think they would want to get involved with. But I always think of it as going kind of backwards. But I started in financial services after I'd owned and operated a Gold's Gym, which was great. It was fun, it was exciting. But after your membership stabilizes, like after 3 years, it gets kind of boring because you're kind of just maintaining that base. You'll sign up 2, 1 quits, and it just kind of got very repetitive, I would say. So I was looking for something new and a different challenge. I got kind of introduced to financial services, and inherently, I put that as like a broad category. And the way I thought of it was like I could work with any type of client and solve any kind of problem that I wanted to. And there was obviously no ceiling, no business model. Like I just kind of looked at it and realized like, hey, I can make a career in financial services whenever I wanted. But where I started actually was selling Medicare supplements, and I was mid 20s. So 25 and my target market is turning 65. And, it was great. You had great earning potential, but it just wasn't my ideal client. I didn't like the process back then. I was cold calling and door knocking for these people. So I kind of realized like great industry, but I had to kind of continue to change, who I was working with and what kind of problem I was solving. And I kind of just kept stepping it up from there. So from Medicare supplements to life insurance, term life to index universal life to annuities to 401ks, and then getting my securities license. And around that time was the early Obama years, his first term, and he had proposed some legislation called the Fiduciary Rule about the time I was studying for my securities exam. And the idea was simple. It's that any financial advisor would have to be a fiduciary to its clients. And that was freaking the industry out. Like people were panicking. They didn't know what to do, how to change their business model, what it meant. And since I was just kind of licensing, I was like, I don't understand why this is a problem. And I definitely don't want to go about this the route everybody else is, which is commission based and being concerned with being transparent with your clients, disclosing your compensation, always working in their best interest. If that's a problem for people, like that's not something I wanted to do. So, the cool thing about securities over insurance licenses is there is different licensing designations for that. So I decided to become a Series 65, which is a fiduciary financial advisor. And, that legislation ended up getting watered down and kind of like never really passed. But I went ahead and took that route anyway.
Yeah. And then how did that then transition into the benefits agency that you own?
Yeah, so I kept kind of working, stepping up the solutions I was offering to clients, and I was working with business owners because they had a lot bigger needs than financial advisors were meeting. You know, if the route to commission is selling a product, um, that advisor is always going to take the most direct, most expedient route to get paid and kind of get out, right? But I realized, like with business owners, there was a whole lot of interesting tax planning and legal structures that could be used. So I started, understanding revocable trusts and ILITs and CRUTs and CRATs and GRATs and defined benefit plans combined with defined contribution plans. So I started working with business owners and then into their 401ks and then also creating pension plans. And just kind of one day, one of them came to me and said, like, "Hey, my broker came in here. He said I have to pay 37% more. That's it. There is nothing else out there. All my employee benefits are going to go up by 37%. Like, can you look at it?" And I had no idea. Like, I'd never done, any group medical health insurance sales or planning. But I kind of just told him, like, yeah, sure, just send me whatever you have. And I had worded it very carefully because I didn't know what I needed. Like, I didn't know what data existed. I didn't know what I would need to solve that problem or figure it out. So that's what he did. He sent me everything he had. I took a couple weeks meeting everybody in the industry that I could, understanding the problem, what's possible, what's not possible, how they go about determining rates, what kind of data exists to underwrite these things, and why it's positioned so highly. And after a couple weeks, I'd put together my first kind of self-funded plan, and we mitigated that increase entirely. So it actually came a point or two under where it was. So a point or two under that 37% projected, right? So he was flat, saving a little bit of money. And we didn't, increase deductibles. We didn't put them in a smaller network. We didn't put more cost share on the employees. So doing that very first case against a publicly traded broker that does, I think, $4 billion a year at this point, um, I realized, like, hey, if I can figure this out, not knowing anything, not really wanting to know anything, I didn't want to get into it, and I can make a 40% difference, then I'm working with the right client. I'm just solving the wrong problem. And that's kind of what led me to go down and understand the benefits industry in that path, because I realized, like, if we just apply the fiduciary standard that I'm using over with the 401k and the pension plans, we apply that same process to the healthcare plans. I just validated that on our very first case. So we can make this work, and off we went.
Yeah. So that background, the reason that I asked for that background to start out is that it leads into kind of the position that you're taking with Ethos, right? You put a fiduciary standard of care in every contract that you make with a client. I've been in rooms with brokers that where that gets brought up, and they were very concerned about what that makes them liable for. Um, and so they like the idea of it, but they're worried to like contractually obligate themselves to it. Um, what do they have wrong when they are thinking that way? When they're thinking, I don't want to put a fiduciary responsibility on myself because
Mhm.
of things that I might get implicated for.
Yeah, I mean, the bar is on the floor, right? If it is a hurdle to act in your client's best interest, to be transparent with the data and the process of how you're coming to a decision, and to disclose your compensation, not only the amount, but the method and the model. Like, if those three things are a hurdle, like, go ahead and quit. Like, do your clients a solid and just go ahead and lead the industry if that's problematic. Like, I fundamentally, I can't understand it. I think probably the initial concern for brokers is like, oh, I don't want to have to talk about how much I'm getting paid or what I am providing back in return, or the results we've had over the last 5 years, 10 years, because that's bad too, right? Like, fundamentally, if you're scared of having that conversation, you don't believe you're bringing your clients enough value for the money you're making. And there is starting to be other good agencies like ours, and they'll take your clients in no time.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason that it's a stumbling block for a lot of people or a fear for a lot of people is that their model's not set up the same way that yours is, right? You you operate on a fee only model, which
Yeah.
is pretty unique.
Yeah. It's a
Can you
little
walk
different.
us through that? Like, I think a lot of listeners may not be familiar with what that looks like and how it's
Mhm.
different from the majority of the market. Can you kind of walk us through what fee only looks like
Yeah.
and how that lets you really act as the fiduciary for your clients?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean we're making less, right? Like fundamental, like we should be able to provide more value and have that conversation upfront with the clients and not have any concerns, which is exactly what we do. So being fee based means a couple things. One, like we all know there's additional bonuses and incentives for, retention and premium growth with like your top two favored medical carriers in your agency, right? And that's always getting pushed down from the top, like from management down, like, no, you have to renew this group because if they fall below a certain threshold, it doesn't just affect the bonus level on that group. If they didn't kind of hit their metrics, it's going to lower their bonus across their entire book of business in the agency, right? So being fee based for one means, obviously the most obvious thing is getting rid of anything that's a percentage of premium because then you're misaligned in your incentives. You're getting paid more when your client pays more. It's a starting point. So changing that to a per employee per month, having that conversation with your plan sponsors on how that is, how it works, and what you're doing in return. Second thing is eliminating those additional bonuses and incentives that would drive you to go to one solution over the other. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. It's not that hard to do as long as you're willing to have the tough conversation first of like justifying your own value to your clients.
That's it is that simple, but it's also not that simple because there's a lot of like it purposeful non-transparency, I would say, in the industry and ways that people can make more money. Like you said, incentives from carriers for writing a certain amount of business and going to fee based, even though it's in the best interest of your client, may mean less revenue for the company out the gates,
Yeah,
right? And so they're kind of betting on the increased revenue from that over and hoping that they can keep retention and keep their clients happy long term when it's way easier to do that when you're financially aligned with your clients. So
yeah.
um it's kind
I
of
mean,
cart
what's
before the horse situation, right?
Yeah, and what's true in all areas of financial services, and I can tell you this from experience, from insurance to securities, is that the best products out there, whether we're talking about, you know, a security or a Medicare supplement, the best priced products that offer the most value to the clients pay the lowest commissions because they don't have to. So anytime there's a high flying commission, it's usually in lieu of some results back to that client. And that's how they're kind of getting their market share is getting to the brokers to offer and position this and incentivize this product. So if we could just flip that the other way and say, like, look, I know, coming into a prospect, I can tell you what this broker's making, right? Here's their disclosed comp, here's estimate of their undisclosed comp, and here's all the conflicts that they listed out in their compensation disclosure. It's going to be within this range. And then we can kind of provide a case of like, look, here's how we would actually position this, and here's our process for doing it, and here's kind of the results that we could get. I don't want to be, incentivized any way other than from you guys directly. So let's just have that relationship be direct. And instead of the carriers deciding how much value the broker's bringing, a consultant can have an actual process and some intellectual property and how they go about solving a problem for an employer and set their own fee with that client directly and have that conversation with them, have them agree to it. Because if you can start off your relationship with a very upfront conversation like that, something that no broker wants to talk about, if you can have that hard conversation first, everything behind that becomes super easy. Right now, there's trust because you talked about the one thing that everybody else is trying to hide. Now you can get after the work, and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff following.
Yeah. I mean, you make it seem so simple, and I think it is more simple when you own the business, right? Than when you work for someone that already has all of those.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so it is simple, and it isn't. It is simple because we've been doing it this way for a long time now, but I can tell you, even starting when we were very small, it happened in the first like 2, 3 years, and we were, tiny agency at that point in time, where the carriers, they incentivize with carrot and stick. The carrot is, hey, we got this great bonus for you. The stick is like, hey, I noticed this client left, that client left. Like maybe we shouldn't work together anymore, right? And they'll actually threaten your appointment. And when you're at a large agency, you really can't get around this. Like they notice what's coming off the books, right? Like every carrier rep has their own book of business. And if they start losing clients, and it goes up to their management, right? And it all gets pushed down. So it is, it's almost impossible for legacy agencies to start positioning themselves as fiduciaries for all these reasons, for the revenue models, for the fact, that it's going to affect their bonus across all levels, for the fact that the carrier will start leveraging the brokers for the type of business and solutions they're doing. And, I had a carrier bring that conversation to me, and I had the sales director of the state call me out of the blue. I'd never talked to him, never heard his name before. And basically just said that, like, hey, I noticed you're moving this one. I noticed you're moving that one. And I just had a very frank conversation. I'm like, that is not really up to me if they leave or if they don't. Like, are you saying I shouldn't do the best thing for my clients and offer them the best renewal solutions because I gave you guys a chance to come back and meet those proposals and you did not? So I didn't lose the client. You lost the client. And like,
How
is
they
it,
react to that?
no, no, I'm not trying to say that, but maybe we just shouldn't work together anymore. And I was just kind of like, look, like this is not my risk. It's not my premium. Those employees don't, they don't answer to me. This is someone else's responsibility, and I'm just taking the best path. So that carrier, they did cancel my appointment. Happened again a couple years later. Got it back both times. It's silly, because I don't need the appointment. At the end of the day, like you can be like a HR designee on that company's, healthcare plan, and you can invoice your client directly, right? So like if I don't need your bonuses and incentives, then I can still consult with my client without selling the insurance. I can just consult on the insurance.
Mhm.
So there's really not much to that when you get through it. And we got past it. It hasn't been a problem for years because it's not our job to position or push for any type of solution. But if we do see something that makes sense, we're going to educate and explain that to the employers. And if they decide to take it, that's theirs. But we really, because we're not commission based, we detached ourselves from product pushing, because we might get paid 1.0 here and 1.25 over here, right? Like now we don't need to have those conflicts. So those things are up for them to decide.
Yeah,
We're just a guide.
that's awesome. Okay, so I wanted to tee those questions up because the reason that we are talking today is I had one of your employees on several months ago, Talia Hansen, and got connected with her, and through her got connected with several other um, producers and account managers at Ethos, and quickly, just through LinkedIn, through their posts, through the things they were talking about, through their comments, realized there's a real company culture here that is ingrained in everyone.
Hmm.
It's honestly, it's incredible. Like it's the company culture that everyone wants to have. Like when your employees talk about working for Ethos, they love it. Right? They feel very privileged to work with a company that has the culture, has the direction that Ethos has. So that was the initial like I really want to talk to you about building that culture, what it took, because I think everyone wants to have that culture where everyone bought in, everyone loves it, and they try different ways to build it. So walk us through building that culture. If an agency's starting today, how do they do that? How do they start?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, it's a huge compliment if anybody can perceive that from the outside. Certainly I believe that's true internally and working with everybody on my team. But I'd say a couple things. Like for one, like I think often a lot of agencies as they're starting, they can have this idea in the founder's mind of like this is the type of agency we are, this is what we believe in, but it's not, um, it's not a process. It's not a guide. Like it's not written down anywhere. Like no one else can get to those thoughts of like what type of agency they are because they're just carrying it in their head. So we were very intentional from the start about like documenting our processes, our brand guide, our story, like who's our best client, how do we best serve them, and that was kind of the starting point. And I think the other thing is like all of our employees, everybody that's at Ethos has come from those other big name agencies, like any one of them, right? And they all got very fatigued with doing what's best for the bonus and the way they had to deal with problems and plan sponsors and employees. Um, so, when we told them like, hey, this is how we do it. We are fiduciaries and this is how we handle consulting and we don't take bonuses and we do what's best for the client and we help the employees out. And then they saw us actually follow through with that. I think that's the game changer. And what I notice more every single day is like we are only good because of the team. So it really starts to flip to where like you want to have that culture, you want to have stability in your employees. We have incredibly low turnover. It's wild. I just kind of realized it the other day. And those people are the ones that deliver for our clients every single day. So those are our team members. They help us get it done. And it's amazing to kind of see it put all together because it's been a good 5 to 6 years of work and just kind of putting all that stuff together. And now it's super stable. And like now those people are perpetuating it for our new hires. Like we had 4 new hires start last week. And now the rest of the team is kind of perpetuating the ethos model and how we position and how we work with people and how we, handle day to day. So it's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you said you wrote it down, you put it on paper. A lot of people do that, right?
Hmm.
Like it's I've worked at a lot of companies where I could recite the mission statement for you,
Sure.
right? And it's on paper, it's on the wall a lot of the times. But you mentioned something that I think is what's getting the buy-in for you more than just having it written down was following through
Yeah.
on those things, right? So let me just kind of give some background here. Um, I've had mission statements that that I helped create
Hmm.
and that I could recite and that the whole company could recite and that we went over in every town hall meeting. And then the company would act in a different way than what the mission statement or the vision statement would say, and immediately discredited the whole thing.
Yes.
And it just eroded trust so fast.
Hmm.
So how how hard has that been, right? Because peop people need to understand that the way that you're doing this was probably not the fastest way to revenue for the agency. You could have made more in different places earlier on,
Yeah. Yeah.
but following through on mission, vision, values, that's what's getting the buy-in. How hard was that in starting and growing the agency?
I think you're right about, the first time they see you not live up to that, then it's out the window, right? So I think most of it is just the follow through and the consistency that they see out of Chelsea and I, and then all the other leaders on our team, and then it just goes downstream. Um, and because like we were never scared, like the fiduciary thing, right? Like just if you're just doing it for the best interest of your client, then you're never going to have to worry about eroding those company principles or values because that, it's in there. It's not only written down, it's obvious to anybody that works at a company that that's who you should be serving in all ways. So just the persistent follow through, and we've never had to do anything where we erode it, whether that's like being, teased with some kind of bonus or incentive that we didn't care about, we didn't take, or dealing with a mistake or a problem, or following through and helping fix a mistake for a new client. Like they see that consistently. We give everybody the kind of leeway and the responsibility to decide that on their own. And then if they need help, they can bring it, up to management. But everybody gets to kind of live that principle on their own, and they're never going to see anybody act contradictory to it.
That's awesome. Okay, so growing your book of business, you mentioned to me that, when you do things right, when you are following through on your mission statement, that your best clients will start to replicate themselves. That's, I think, different than a lot of people experience. I think a lot of people experience get whatever clients you can and try to serve them the best they can. So, talk us through what that looks like in pipeline. How long does it take for that to actually start happening? Because, like I said, I think people sometimes will forfeit that in lieu of getting the clients now, even if they're not the ideal clients.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, now it seems brilliant, but like when we had to actually go through with some of these things, it was very, very difficult to do. So, first thing we did, I mean, at the end of the day, our end goal is to kind of bring these solutions and the premium stability and the cost reduction to as many employees as possible. So the first thing we did was we kind of put a cap on what our minimum is, right? And in doing that, we also sold off 80% by volume as far as plan sponsors of our clients, which was wild.
Yeah,
Like
that's a scary move.
we were literally left with less than 20% of our clients as, when we're thinking of employers, but we just kind of maintained the biggest one. So we did both of those things at the same time. We kept all of our employees. And we use that time to kind of build out our systems and our processes and our IP on how we consult, how we, any mistake we've had, how can we catch that sooner? How can we mitigate any type of mistake that we just considered, right? Like that's kind of what we did. Got rid of the small ones, put a cap on where we were willing to work, and then just made sure we continue to build and refine everything to support those larger clients. And I mean, I can't tell, I probably turn away at least one small employer a week, and I refer that out to, another agency. Um, and that's hard because you look at it and you're like, well, I could just do this right now. And it could be a $25,000 client, a $50,000 client. Um, but it doesn't work. Like you need to do your best work and be focused. And if you're working for your ideal client, they start to bring you into other clients. We do a lot of education and public speaking. So last week we were at SHRM 26, which is the national conference. It was in Orlando, 20,000 people. It was insane. And we did a session with two of our clients. And we went over a 5-year case study of what we've done, how it worked, the numbers. They're on stage. They're talking about the good, the bad, what was hard, what was surprising. The fact that they haven't had to increase premium in 4 years, or they gave employees money back, or whatever it was. So doing stuff like that, because you're not bogged down in the execution of clients that don't fit, your ICP and what you're there to do and what your purpose is, allows you that time and headspace to get to the right clients. And when you do that, like we don't have a single client in our book that like our account execs and our account managers don't like, or we don't like we really enjoy working with all of our clients. We don't come at it from like a relationship building approach. We come at it from like a, kind of a challenging and educational based approach on like process and how they can do it differently. And because they're willing to kind of entertain that conversation and consider how they're doing it, like we get to educate them, we respect them, and then we start to also enjoy their company. But we don't do like the whole, like, I'm going to wine and dine you and take you to sporting events thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's wild. I can't really explain all the ways it happens, but I can tell you there's not a single plan sponsor in our book of business that we don't enjoy working with. We don't, thank them for putting their trust in us and allowing us to, work on their account. And if we do, I will fire a client. I did that last year, and it was clear like they just didn't want to listen. Like they thought they knew the answer, and I was making it very clear with data, like, hey, look, this is what it's actually saying. And they were just trying to get to their answer. And I was just kind of like, look, I wish you the best of luck when you renew in 2 months. Like, I don't want to participate in it. So I'll give you plenty of time to kind of do that. And That's kind of the only negative experience we've had with any client of any kind in the past, 5 years.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You mentioned being on stage with two of your clients. I think intentionally carving out who your clients were gave you the time to do that, gave you the time to perform for those clients so that they would be on stage with you and could talk about how they haven't had the increases. And then obviously for the audience, they're like, well, we had
Hmm.
30% increases last
Yeah.
year. So
Yeah.
yeah, that gets a lot of business. But there's also this concept that people regurgitate this a lot where they say you're the average of your five closest friends or something along those lines. Now reverse that, right? Your clients have five closest friends that are probably similar to them.
Hmm.
So if you can serve them very well, their network of people who make the decisions for other businesses is really big. And I've worked with a lot of CEOs and CFOs, and they know a lot of CFOs around them. So when you're doing a really good job and they hear from one of their closest friends who's also a CFO that we had a 15% increase last year, and they get to say, "Oh, we haven't had an increase in 4 years." That's when they start to replicate themselves, right? So there's multiple ways, multiple paths that this takes to.
Yeah, I'd say it goes even a little bit further. Like I'm always looking for the highest leverage activity that I could possibly do. So like thinking of like this past week and having two clients and speaking in front of 259 people, the leverage was one, I got to further develop my relationship with my clients through like the process and the journey we've been on together for the last 5 years, right? So it's kind of like we're developing that relationship after doing the good work instead of trying to sell by developing a phony relationship. And so that's great. Time spent with them. The other thing is obviously we're speaking to 259 people. They get to talk about all the things they've learned, the way they've advanced their own career within their company, how they've been able to make positive impacts for all the people they're responsible to, lowering their number two cost in the company. So it's an incredibly valuable kind of process. And it's really great to kind of just work with those individuals, those HR directors, those CFOs. And, we're not the hero of the story. We're just a guide, right? And they get to kind of go through this process and bring those results back to their people, which is great.
Yeah. Being the guide, let's kind of take a tangent there. But um, there's a lot of people who sign on the line for benefits packages that don't necessarily understand the pitfalls and intricacies of the things that they're signing on the line for. They see kind of like bottom line. And I've seen you and Chelsea both just pick apart some contracts that people sign and pull those pitfalls out. So I'm curious, as the guide, and you're probably guiding your clients through this a lot, but if you had the chance to get in front of a group of, let's just say if you had to got a message in front of every CEO or CFO in the country and got to talk about things that they should be looking for in their health plans that weren't in their best interest. Can you give us the top three things that you see show up that are like, that's almost never in your best interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to start with their representation, right? Their brokers. So, like, fundamentally, like, they're supposed to be hiring somebody who knows more than them to guide them through that process.
Hmm.
So, I always first talk about just alignment, right? Creating alignment in the decision making and having an actual process. This shouldn't just be like, well, I'm going to take whatever the carrier spit out and then throw that to the other 2 to 3 carriers. We'll see what happens and then I'll report back to you. Like, that's not a process. AI could do that. A computer could do that. A client could do that by themselves. Like it's not valuable. So in creating alignment, we talk about external and internal alignment. External alignment should be understanding the broker relationship and how they get compensated, what their process is, when they make more, when they make less, what are they disclosing, hopefully getting to a fiduciary standard of care like that. Again, bars on the floor, right? Should not be hard. And then the internal alignment is something that we do with every client, which is actually creating like a fiduciary committee similar to what they have for their 401ks, to where we're bringing in at least three personas where we have that chief executive, CFO, HR director. and putting them through our fiduciary framework process to where we're going through quarterly meetings, basically defining this process, what's going on, our contract review, our claims review, and making sure they understand as a company what's happening, because that's going to inform them next year on what decisions they need to make and how quickly they need to make a decision. Right. So alignment, internal, external. Um, I mean, that's really the biggest. Those are the two biggest things. If you do those two things, you'll start to ask better questions, because the CFO is going to bring different questions than the HR director. A chief executive is going to bring different questions. And if you're externally aligned where those questions could get answered honestly, you'll start to figure everything else out.
Yeah. Um, to us, that's probably pretty like easy to see how they could see the external alignment, right?
hmm
Are you as their consultant aligned with their best interests? How can they easily see that if they're evaluating their whole
Yeah.
process there?
I mean, so most brokerages now are releasing a compensation disclosure, which is honestly, most of them are complete crap. They'll be 15 to 20 pages. And in those 15 to 20 pages, they won't actually quantify how much they're making. They might put out some simple metrics. And then in there, they'll put out all the misaligned incentives. But because it's in 20 pages, like very often they don't get to that. And also they're usually getting that after coming to a decision. Too late, right? So I think having that compensation disclosure, going through it, highlighting all the conflicts of interest, like, wait a minute, you receive equity lines of interest from the carriers you recommend, or lines of credit or equity interest in those carriers that you recommend. You get bonuses and incentives. How much? Right? Like, how much commission am I paying in that? Is that all? So when that compensation disclosure is unclear, and it will be, what we tell employers is to have the broker fill out a 408B2, which is similar to it is the compensation disclosure used on 401ks. That is now what is being used for healthcare plans, right? And in a 408B2, it's much more direct, much more clear. On health, how much are you making? When would you make more? Is it percentage? Is it PEPM? Is there a bonus and incentive? What is it? And they're not going to want to answer that. So you can ask them, what was it last year? They do have that number. And then once you go through that, you can start to see how aligned this relationship is. Another thing that I find interesting, like being a former securities advisor, the first thing you do with anybody is you go through a historical performance, right? How have you been how have you been doing since you've been with your last advisor? There's not a broker that I have ever seen that will or has done that exercise. Because what are they going to say? Hey, since we've been working together the last 5 years, isn't it great? Your premium has gone up 37%. By the way, my compensation has also gone up 37%.
Hmm.
You ready for renewal? Right? Like
Yeah.
that's just not going to happen. So I would say just ask for a 408B2. I think I have them on my website if anybody wants to pull one. And just ask them to fill it out. And when they don't want to, that should probably tell you all you need to know. Like if there's any pushback in completing an honest, compensation disclosure, that should probably be the end of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll be pretty eye opening if people go through that exercise. Um, okay. So we've gone through a lot. I want to kind of distill it down into takeaways. Like I always say, if people take 45 minutes to an hour out of their day to watch an episode, I hope they walk away with something that they can do tomorrow. You've given phenomenal information so far, both for employers that are watching, but also for brokers and producers that are watching, or agency owners that are trying to build an agency with the company buy-in that you have, the culture that you have. So for an agency owner who wants to build something similar to what you've built, but can't flip the revenue switch overnight, right? It can't be hey, we're where Ethos is, day one. That's not going to
Mhm.
happen. What's the first thing you recommend they do, uh, you know, tomorrow morning?
I would recommend that they do a compensation disclosure, an honest one for their clients. So, you know, being a fiduciary doesn't necessarily mean that you have to flip this, model where you're getting paid from the carriers. You can be honest and transparent about that and disclose exactly what it is. And if you believe there's a conflict, disclose that. And you're on your way to being a fiduciary. It's not the most ideal way, but if you could say, like, look, I have these three proposals. For one, you can get the carriers to match compensation, right? So now you've taken away your own personal incentives and biases, right? And again, if you do it that way, you can decide what that is, right? Being a fiduciary doesn't mean you don't get paid and you have to discount yourself. It's quite the opposite, right? Um, so I think disclosing what you make and then also a list of services that you're giving back will get you having better conversations, and we'll start to build in trust because they'll start to say, oh, I never knew, I never understood how that worked. But doing that before the renewal, not after, because that is how it's being done, right? Like after everything's done, that gets slid in when everybody else is the company's fatigued and they're tired and open enrollment is going on and employees are asking the questions. Like at the time, they're at least going to look at it. Here, this is right. So having that conversation about like, look, this is how the industry works on my end. This is how the process is going and what this carrier is looking for and how underwriting is and just having a more honest conversation. Because if you don't, somebody else will come in behind you and say like, hey, did you know they're paying a fourth quarter bonus of $50 per enrolled employee per year? No, I didn't know that. Right. Because, when you see a spreadsheet, it's very easy to tell, what's position number one. And, in my mind, I know the back end, like I know the incentives and the bonuses. Oh, wouldn't you know that the highest bonusing program is recommended number one and everything else is kind of falling down.
Yeah, that's great advice. Um, will be hard for some people, but good advice to hear. So last question. I know we're running up on time, but the benefit space is exciting right now.
Mhm.
It's exciting and it's scary and it's changing significantly. And I think the change is driven by increases that are being passed on to employers and employees, and them now asking the questions that are the hard questions for their agencies to answer. But my question for you is what has you most excited about being in the benefit space in 2026?
I think with, the legislation and some of the litigation, the CAA of 2021, of 2026, of some of the healthcare lawsuits we're seeing, like plan sponsors are starting to pay more attention to this. And a lot of those are like broker compensation and misaligned incentives. And then the company's getting sued for not, knowing and understanding that. So like, I think just generally like that conversation is coming more to the top. Like the PBM conversation has obviously been up there for the past couple of years. Now, being a prudent fiduciary is kind of right up there and understanding incentives and decisions and your data and owning your data. Like all this stuff is starting to become very important, which is great. Because that's what's needed. And, the solutions are out there if people start asking better questions. And we're going to continue to see that. We're going to continue to see healthcare lawsuits, misaligned incentives, more broker lawsuits. That's great. And all that stuff is also like we're using that heavily more every day for our contract review and our contract negotiation. So like brokers so often only focus on negotiating on price, but we can negotiate and redline the contract and get better terms for the plan sponsor. So they own their data, they have audit rights, they can do a PBM carve out, they can, whatever solution they want, that stuff can be worked in as well. And that's going to set them up for further years and for further understanding their benefits and making decisions. So those two things kind of together are really starting to change the landscape for our clients and like our process and where we're positioned for the upcoming year.
Yeah, it's a good time in the benefit space to be Ethos Benefits. Let's just say it like that.
I
To
think
be
so.
to be a fiduciary uh, benefits broker, or um, more appropriately, a benefits consultant. So I appreciate your time, Donovan. I know how valuable your time is. I appreciate you sharing with everyone on here. And if you've watched this and you haven't learned something really valuable in both the way that you're approaching your business and the way that you're building your business and your team, go back and rewatch it because there's some gold in this episode. Donovan, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Me personally, I'd say the website. If you want to learn some more, or go down the rabbit hole a little bit more about like benefits or healthcare or how stuff is positioned. We produced a healthcare documentary 2, 3 years back. It's called It's Not Personal. It's just healthcare. It's like 60, 70 minutes. We're not in it. It's everybody else in the healthcare supply chain. That's on the website. I'd say watch that. When people watch that, they're usually motivated, pissed off, and they come away with a lot more knowledge. So it's an amazing watch. I'm super proud of it and all the people that are in it and participated. So
Awesome. We'll add the website to the show notes. Again, appreciate your time. And this has been another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. Remember to be better tomorrow than you were today, and we'll catch you next time.